I'm Tucker, and today I'll be looking at talent show performers whose moment in the spotlight became their final curtain call. From a girl who stepped into a box with a spinning blade for the very first time to an escape artist sealed inside a water tank, where everything went horribly wrong. It was October 14th, 2016, at a civic auditorium in Missouri. The stage was set for a regional talent show, with bright lights and a big crowd. A magician had prepared a special act, a sawing illusion built around a custom industrial-style stage apparatus. Backstage, things were busy but calm. Leonila Bain, 24 years old. She worked as a receptionist and also helped backstage for magic acts. Leonila was quiet and hardworking, but she really wanted to be seen as a performer. For years, she had helped others get recognition, but she was never the one in the spotlight. That night, she was finally getting her chance to be on stage inside the sawing box. She may have felt nervous and excited at the same time, because at last, the big moment she had waited for years was finally happening. The magician had redesigned the act to look more dramatic. Instead of a standard illusion prop, he used a custom-built sawing apparatus made from industrial components. The visible blade was mostly decorative, but the effect relied on a motorized carriage hidden inside the apparatus. To make the movement appear smooth and powerful under the stage lights, the system used a large steel flywheel weighing nearly 200 pounds. The flywheel stored a significant amount of rotational energy and helped eliminate jerky movement during the performance. The system also lacked an independent dynamic brake, meaning that cutting power alone would not stop the mechanism immediately. Hidden positioning restraints were built into the box to keep Leonila safely away from the moving mechanism. But during setup, her costume kept snagging on backstage equipment. A crew member suggested she change outfits, but Leonila refused. She said she wanted the performance to succeed and didn't want to miss her rare chance to be on stage. She also didn't know that one of the restraint mounting points had a tiny crack from all the rehearsals. The crack was hidden beneath a metal cover plate and wasn't visible during normal inspections. The performance began. Leonila entered the illusion box, and the routine started normal. But then a loose piece of fabric got caught in a moving part inside the apparatus. That snag pulled against the restraint system that was supposed to keep her away from the blade. The unusual force placed stress on the already weakened mounting point. The cracked metal support failed, causing the primary restraint to shift. As the restraint gave way, Leonila was pulled out of the safe position inside the apparatus. The movement happened inside the enclosed illusion box, so most people couldn't see it. The magician noticed something was wrong when the mechanism began behaving unexpectedly. The magician hit the emergency stop button. The motor shut down immediately, but the heavy flywheel was still spinning at high speed and contained enough stored energy to drive the carriage through the final portion of its travel path. Because the apparatus had no dedicated braking system, there was no way to absorb that momentum instantly. Police quickly stopped the show and secured the stage. Investigators concluded that the most likely sequence of events began with the costume snag. The broken restraint was the main reason she moved out of position. They also determined that the emergency stop had functioned correctly and had immediately cut power to the motor. However, the flywheel's stored energy continued driving the mechanism after shutdown. Investigators noted that the apparatus relied solely on power cutoff and lacked a secondary braking system capable of stopping the flywheel's momentum more quickly. Safety experts later said that a less hazardous stage mechanism or a faster braking system might have reduced the severity of the accident. I can't help but think if she had just changed outfits, she might still be alive today, but she wanted to be seen, and that led to a terrible chain of events that no one had predicted. It's a hard lesson now just for her, but also for us, that sometimes the thing you want most can be the thing that can hurt you. Officials concluded that Leonila suffered fatal injuries when the mechanism continued its final movement after the emergency stop cut power, driven by the flywheel's remaining stored energy. That night, a stage became a place of sorrow, and I still feel a knot in my stomach every time I think about it. Leonila's story showed how a hidden flaw and one small decision can collide at the worst possible moment. But the next case involves something far harder to control. It was June 2nd, 2017. in a county fair talent showcase in Texas. The fairgrounds were busy. It features a variety of acts throughout the day, including singers, dancers, magicians, stunt performers, and specialty acts competing for audience attention. One of the headline performances was a big cat demonstration. The performance area consisted of a reinforced steel mesh demonstration enclosure, surrounded by additional safety barriers designed to keep spectators at a safe distance. The star of the act was a full-grown lion. The performer that day was Xavier Dredge, a 42-year-old animal handler. He had spent years performing animal acts at fairs and public showcases, building a reputation for working with dangerous animals. He was proud of that image, but business had become more difficult in recent years. Several venues had reduced or canceled animal acts, and Xavier depended on showcase appearances to secure future bookings and keep his operation running. This performance wasn't just another show. It was an important source of income and a chance to attract future work. If you look at it, he's desperate for people to see him as brave. But for me, it feels like it's more about his ego that is talking rather than actual bravery. The lion had been brought in earlier that day, and handlers noticed it seemed unusually restless. The animal had performed at public events before, but the combination of loud music, nearby rides, and the unusually large crowd appeared to be affecting its behavior. During preparation, the lion repeatedly paced the enclosure, lashed its tail, and was slower than usual to respond to commands. Some staff suggested delaying the performance or replacing it with another act from the showcase lineup, but Xavier refused. He thought backing down would damage his reputation and disappoint the audience. By the time the show started, the viewing area was packed. It was one of the most anticipated acts of the entire showcase. From the start, Xavier entered the enclosure alone, while backup handlers remained outside in designated safety positions. At first, the lion obeyed commands, moving where he was directed and sitting when told. The audience clapped, impressed by how calm Xavier looked. The performance appeared to be going exactly as planned. Xavier guided the animal through several routines he had performed many times before, and the crowd responded enthusiastically. But midway through the demonstration, the lion's behavior shifted. It stopped responding consistently to commands and began pacing in tighter circles. Xavier attempted to redirect its attention, using familiar signals and verbal cues. For a moment, the lion appeared to settle down, but only briefly. Witnesses later recalled that the animal seemed increasingly distracted by the noise coming from outside the enclosure. Xavier looked tense, but he continued with the performance instead of ending it early. I couldn't help but notice he pushed on, not because things were under control, but because stopping would have ruined the tough image he wanted people to see. The lion suddenly let out a deep growl and lunged toward Xavier. He stepped back quickly, attempting to create distance, but the animal closed the gap almost instantly. Before he could move out of the way, the lion struck him with enough force to knock him to the ground. At first, some audience members thought it was part of the act. That confusion lasted only seconds. The lion remained on Xavier, and the crowd quickly realized something had gone terribly wrong. Backup handlers immediately activated emergency procedures. They grabbed distraction equipment and catch poles and rushed toward the enclosure. Several attempted to divert the lion's attention, while others worked to create an opening to reach Xavier safely. The situation became chaotic. Fair staff began clearing spectators from the area while emergency services were notified. Despite the rapid response, the attack unfolded faster than responders could safely intervene. The lion inflicted catastrophic injuries before handlers were able to separate it from Xavier. Once the lion was secured, the talent showcase area was evacuated. Emergency personnel entered the enclosure and began treatment, but Xavier's injuries were too severe. The remainder of the talent showcase was canceled as authorities secured the scene and interviewed witnesses. Investigators emphasized that the animal's behavior was consistent with a stressed predator reacting unpredictably in a stimulating environment. The lion was not acting out of malice. It was responding to circumstances that should have prompted greater caution from those overseeing the performance. Watching Xavier push forward despite warning signs is frustrating in hindsight. What happened next takes us from a massive fairground to a small theater, where a split-second reaction changed everything. It was March 18, 2015, in Ohio. The Community Arts Theater sat in the middle of the downtown block, a small stage, roughly 200 seats, and a crowd that had been sitting through performances for hours. Matthew Perez was 31 years old. During the week, he worked as a warehouse supervisor. People who knew him said he was focused, a little stubborn, and took pride in doing things right. On a stage, though, Matthew became someone else. He had been competing in local talent shows for years, performing knife-juggling routines using weighted performance blades, built for spin and balance, with beveled edges designed for catching. He'd placed second, third, honorable mention, but never reached first. This night was the closest he'd ever gotten to that top spot. He had been practicing a faster version of his act specifically for this competition. That was his plan walking in. Most of us know that feeling when you're so close to finally making it after years of trying, years of coming up short. Sometimes that's exactly when people start taking risks they normally wouldn't. Before the show, one of his knives was showing wear. The handle had some looseness, and the blade had been through dozens of practice sessions. Matthew noticed, thought about it, and decided to keep it in the rotation anyway. The theater encouraged audience members to record performances, something that became important later. Matthew started strong, with several clean, controlled passes. But during the finale, a worn knife slipped from his grip. As it fell, the blade struck the metal edge of the stage and bounced upward instead of sliding away. Audience recordings later confirmed the deflection and the knife's unexpected path back up. Matthew moved toward it on instinct, a performer's reflex to recover a dropped prop and keep the routine alive. He lunged forward, but his foot slipped as he moved. Investigators later noted the stage surface was a standard sealed wood floor, and the slip was consistent with the speed and sharp angle of his movement rather than any defect in the floor. He fell forward while the knife was still descending. The two met at the worst possible moment, resulting in a deep penetrating wound to his upper body. It took a few seconds before people near the stage understood something had gone wrong. Staff moved quickly. Emergency responders arrived within minutes. Matthew was alive when they reached him, but the wound had caused severe internal bleeding that couldn't be stabilized at the scene. He died shortly after. The theater was cleared, and the competition was called off. I know what it feels like to want something so badly that you ignore the warnings. It shows how easily pride can take over. Matthew spent years chasing a victory that always seemed just out of reach. Our next performer wasn't fighting for a title as much as she was trying to give her students one last unforgettable performance. It was September 9th, 2018, at a local talent competition in Colorado. A trapeze had been set up above the stage for one of the acts, with a safety net underneath. The net had been used for years, and staff inspected the equipment before the show. No obvious damage was found, so organizers believed it was safe to use. The performer was Elise Roth, a 27-year-old gymnastics instructor. She spent most of her time teaching children and teenagers. Elise entered the competition because she wanted to perform one final major aerial routine before focusing completely on teaching. Many of her students were in the audience that day, excited to watch their instructor perform. I can picture how proud those kids must have felt, and it makes me think about how much pressure Elise probably carried knowing her students were watching. I've felt that before, and I'm telling you, it's not easy. Elise had practiced aerial skills for years. Her routine included several releases and catches while swinging high above the stage. She had trained for it and believed she was ready. The organizers also believed the setup was safe. The trapeze equipment had been checked before the show. The net looked normal from the outside, and routine visual inspections had never revealed major damage. What nobody realized was that parts of the net had been in service longer than recommended by the manufacturer. Records later showed it had exceeded its suggested service life. The net had not undergone the testing and replacement schedule recommended by the manufacturer, allowing hidden weakness to go unnoticed. When Elise's turn arrived, she climbed into position above the stage. Her first movements went smoothly. She swung back and forth and completed several aerial maneuvers without any problems. As the routine continued, Elise prepared for a release sequence. She let go at the planned moment and reached to reconnect with the trapeze. Witnesses later reported that she lost her grip and could not recover. Instead of reconnecting with the equipment, she began falling toward the safety net below. The net initially did its job. It caught her and absorbed part of the impact. For a brief moment, it appeared the safety system had worked. Then, the weakened material failed. Audience recordings later showed a worn section tearing apart under the force of the fall. As the tear spread, an opening formed, and Elise slipped through before the net could stop her completely. Because the trapeze was set high above the stage, there was still enough distance below the net for a dangerous secondary fall. Elise struck the stage area beneath. Audience members quickly realized this was not part of the act. Staff rushed toward her, while emergency responders were called. Several audience recordings later helped investigators understand exactly how the failure happened. Emergency personnel arrived quickly and provided aid at the scene. Despite those efforts, the injuries from the secondary fall were too severe. Elise was later pronounced dead. After the accident, the venue was cleared and the competition was canceled. Investigators examined the damaged net, reviewed maintenance records, and studied audience recordings. The official conclusion was that Elise died from injuries suffered after falling through a weakened section of safety net that failed under impact. Evidence from the damaged equipment, maintenance records, and audience video showed that the worn condition of the net was a major factor in the accident. I see this as proof that safety gear isn't enough unless it's maintained. I've also relied on routine checks myself before, but now I wonder if that's really enough to keep me safe. Elise trusted the equipment that was supposed to protect her. The next performer faced a very different danger, one that he willingly brought onto the stage himself. It was July 21st, 2017, at the Fairgrounds event in Florida. The building was a big, square metal shed with concrete floors and a stage at one end. On that Friday night, the talent show finals were packed. People sat in folding chairs or stood along the walls. They had come to see fire performers, jugglers, singers, and dancers. The winner would get a trophy and a small cash prize. The man who wanted that prize most was Benji Crump, a 34-year-old bartender who practiced fire tricks at night. After 2 years and dozens of successful performances, his growing confidence convinced him he could push beyond the limits. Before he went on, Benj told a few other performers he was going to try something special for the finale. They noticed he was setting up extra equipment, a bigger torch, and a metal bowl with extra fuel. During rehearsals the week before, Benj had used the same fuel mixture everyone else used, a mix of lamp oil and a little white gas. It was safe and gave a bright flame, but on the night of the finals, he brought his own fuel from home. He poured it into a small metal can and hid it behind a curtain. None of the event staff saw him do it, and that was the first big mistake he made. He wanted to be different so badly that he didn't think about the risks. The show began. Other acts went first. A juggler, a kid playing violin, a dancer. Then it was Benji's turn. He walked on stage wearing a black shirt and jeans. His costume had some flame-resistant paint on the arms, but not on the back or legs. He started with small tricks, spinning a lit torch, blowing a puff of fire from his mouth. The crowd cheered. He moved to medium-sized effects, twirling 2 torches at once, then lighting a ring of fire on the floor. People clapped louder. Benji smiled wide. For the finale, he picked up a large metal rod with a cloth wad at the end. He dipped it into the bowl of his special fuel. The other performers in the audience noticed the flame was blue and white when he lit it, hotter than usual. Benji swung the rod in a big circle over his head. The flame grew huge, maybe 6 feet across. The heat made the first few rows of the audience lean back. Then some of the fuel dripped off the rod and landed on Benji's shirt near his collar. The flame-resistant paint wasn't there. The shirt caught fire instantly. I can't imagine how scary it must have been to watch someone burn right in front of you. I've seen small fire accidents before, and even those were enough to make me freeze. Benj dropped the rod and tried to pat the flames with his hands. That moved the fire to his sleeves and his chest. He stumbled backward and fell off the stage steps. Fire safety volunteers rushed forward with a fire extinguisher. In the confusion, several crucial seconds passed before the suppressant reached the base of the flames. By the time they finally got the fire under control, Benj had already suffered devastating burns over much of his upper body. The crowd screamed and backed away. Someone called 911. Paramedics arrived within a few minutes and loaded him into an ambulance. He was taken to a hospital. The show stopped right there and the building was cleared. Investigators examined the scene the next morning and found an extra fuel can hidden behind a curtain. Lab tests showed it contained a mixture of kerosene and naphtha, a hotter-burning fuel than the approved mixture used during rehearsals. Investigators concluded that the fuel accelerated the spread of the fire after Benj's clothing became contaminated. Witnesses, including 3 other fire performers, reported seeing him use the fuel and perform a trick that had not been part of rehearsals. The official finding was accidental death caused by severe burns and related complications. In my opinion, this was a case of chasing attention and underestimating fire. Benj had the skill but not the caution. If he had used the safer fuel, he might still be here. Instead, he became one of the worst talent show deaths ever recorded. The next case is unsettling for a different reason, because the person at the center of it wasn't even performing. It was November 11th, 2015, at a regional talent show finals event in Arizona. One of the final acts involved a contestant performing a crossbow accuracy demonstration. For the last shot, a small target had been mounted near the far side of the stage, offset from the judges' table. Organizers believed the setup was safe because the planned path of the bolt was designed to pass well clear of both the audience and judging panel. One of the judges that evening was Frida Prentice, a 46-year-old office manager. People who knew her described her as organized, patient, and fair. She often helped with local events and had been invited to judge the competition because of her experience. Frida spent the evening carefully watching contestants and making notes about their performances. The contestant performing the crossbow act was known for accuracy and constant practice. His desire for perfection had helped him reach the finals. The act featured several targets, with the final shot being the most difficult. Before the event, the main crossbow had undergone repairs. A backup crossbow was available backstage. Even after the repairs, there were minor concerns about part of the aiming system. The contestant trusted the repaired crossbow because it was the one he had practiced with for months. He believed switching to the backup could affect his accuracy. The crossbow had also performed normally during practice, convincing him it was safe to use. As the performance began, everything appeared normal. One target after another was struck successfully. Audience members applauded as the shots became more difficult. As the act continued, repeated loading, firing, and handling gradually loosened part of the repaired aiming system. The change was small and impossible to notice. During the shorter shots, the aiming error was not large enough to cause a miss. The earlier targets were large enough that the growing problem remained hidden. Eventually, only the finale remained. Frida sat at the judging table with the other judges. Audience members focused on what was expected to be the final successful shot of the evening. I always thought judging was the safest job. Then I watched Frida sit beneath a crossbow bolt, and suddenly it didn't seem so safe after all. The contestant loaded the crossbow, aimed at the elevated target, and fired. Witnesses later reported that nothing seemed unusual before the shot. At first, everything appeared routine, but the small aiming problem became much more noticeable during the long-distance finale. Investigators later concluded that the loosened sight caused a significant aiming error. Instead of continuing toward the intended target, the bolt veered off course toward the side of the stage, where the judging panel was seated. People near the front realized something was wrong when the bolt failed to strike the target and movement suddenly erupted around the judging table. The performance stopped instantly. Staff members rushed toward the judges' area. Frida had been struck by the off-course bolt. Medical personnel already present at the event responded within moments and began emergency care. Despite emergency efforts, Frida's injuries were fatal. It really bothers me that a simple mistake with a repair could end up killing someone. It didn't have to happen, and that is the worst part. Authorities secured the crossbow and stopped the competition. Investigators collected the equipment, reviewed maintenance records, and examined audience videos. The recordings helped confirm that the bolt had missed its intended target. The examination found that part of the aiming system had not been properly aligned after the earlier repair. Investigators determined that repeated use gradually loosened the improperly repaired sight, creating an aiming error that remained unnoticed during earlier shots but became critical during the finale. The competition was canceled following the incident. Investigators found no evidence that the performer intended to create danger. Instead, the evidence showed that he believed the repaired crossbow remained reliable because it had performed normally during practice and during the earlier shots. Our final story takes us back to center stage, where a performer placed all her faith in a stunt she thought she had mastered. It was May 6, 2018, at the Riverfront Convention Hall in Louisiana. The hall was filled with folding chairs, bright stage lights, and a large water tank set up right in the center of the stage. The crowd was buzzing with excitement, waiting for the headline act of the evening. Ayumi Crandall, 29 years old, was that headline performer. She worked as a professional escape artist, known for her daring underwater stunts. She was ambitious, confident, and determined to break her own escape time record in front of the biggest audience she had ever faced. I sometimes think ambition can feel like you are in a spotlight. It makes you want to shine brighter, even if the risks are bigger. Ayumi had rehearsed for weeks, but she wanted the stunt to look even harder than usual. To do that, she secretly modified the release system on the barrel she would be locked inside. She even disabled the backup release feature because she thought it made the escape too easy. None of the event staff knew about these changes. To me, it feels like she trusted her skills so much that she forgot safety as part of the performance too. The show began with excitement. Audience members raised their phones to live stream. Ayumi climbed into the barrel, and assistants sealed it shut. The barrel was lowered into the water tank, and the crowd leaned forward, waiting for the escape to unfold. At first, everything looked normal. She started her routine, moving inside the barrel as planned. But then the modified mechanism didn't work. A part shifted and jammed, locking her in place. Ayumi tried to continue, but the system wouldn't budge. The audience thought the delay was part of the act. They were used to her stretching the time to build suspense. The safety team monitored the timer closely, but at first they believed she was attempting another personal best performance because she had exceeded her advertised escape times before without incident. As soon as the timer passed the upper limit discussed during the pre-show briefing, crew members tried to contact her through the established signal system. When no response came back, concern escalated immediately. Assistants quickly rushed to initiate emergency procedures. They pulled the barrel out of the tank and worked quickly to open it. When they got it open, Ayumi was unresponsive. Emergency responders tried to resuscitate her, but it was too late. The performance stopped immediately, and the crowd sat in stunned silence. Investigators later examined the equipment. They confirmed that Ayumi had made modifications without approval. The disabled backup release feature would have given her another way out, but she had removed it. Audience recordings showed the growing concern as time passed. Capturing the moment, staff shifted from routine monitoring to emergency action when she failed to respond to safety checks. Officials concluded that the jammed modification prevented her escape. They also determined that the brief delay caused by the crew's reasonable belief that the extended time was intentional reduced the rescue window. Ayumi's death was ruled an accidental drowning. The competition was canceled for the rest of the evening. Ayumi wanted to impress the crowd, but her choice to remove safety features left her trapped. In the end, the investigative conclusion was clear. The stunt failed because of the jammed modification, and the lack of a backup release system sealed her fate. Although the crew followed emergency procedures once the warning signs became clear, the lost time proved critical. It was a preventable accident, and one of the worst talent show deaths ever recorded. And here's something I keep asking myself. How much risk should we accept in the name of entertainment before it stops being worth it?